Hello, this is Daniel with PwnCNC, and we're here today to install the bracketing system for the XCarve. Let's get started. So in your package, you should find a right and a left support arm, 2 track brackets, a stabilizer bracket, 2 nut pins here, 2 thumb screws, 2 ear parts, 2 of these little tabs, as well as 2 short M5 screws, 4 long M5 screws, and then of course 2 socket head M5 screws. So let's get a close-up of the XCarve. Okay, so we're going to get started. Right here, we're going to start on the right side. We're going to take our right ear, and that's the part where it's curved on the top, flat on the bottom, and it's sticking on the right side. It's going to be installed just like this. But before we can do that, we need to switch it around to the back side. We need to take our little tab piece and one of the short M5 screws, insert that in, and in the lower hole here, the lower left hole here on the back side, we're going to thread this screw into place. We're going to take a 3mm hex driver. And that little tab helps secure the ear so that it doesn't shift on us. So we're going to tighten it down just a little bit. Bring our ear where it's pointed straight down. Here, let me get a closer view of the camera here. See how it's just barely in there. Hold it in place, and we're going to tighten it down. It's not going to need to move or anything like that, so just hold it and give it a nice tight squeeze. It should not move. Now, we're going to take our ear, going to slide it angled like this, slide it right into the track. At the very top, we're going to push it up all the way. Snap that back into place, and it should slide relatively freely in the track. So we're going to slide that all the way down until it makes contact. The earpiece, and here, let me switch you to it. Let me take you off the rack here. Here we go. Okay, so as you can see, a little closer view here, the tab, whenever it slides down into place, it will slide just behind the piece here. And what that'll do is it'll prevent the ear from moving back and forth. So let's get started and do the other side. Okay, so I'm going to take the tab, put our short M5 screw through there. Now it's just barely enough to catch the threads, so you might need to use a little hex driver to kind of push it through, twist it through. And that's just to hold it in place. There we go. So, and our left ear, we're going to come in from the back side, just like before. We're going to screw our little tab into that lower outer hole. We're going to hold that thumb piece in place as we tighten it down. There we are. We have our tab, we have our ear. Just like before, we're going to come up here to the very top, slide that into the track, bend it around, and it drops into place. Again, just behind that plate. So it's not going anywhere. Let's drop down and look at our track bracket. Okay, so here we are, we're ready to install our track bracket. You notice we've got a little L here, and then it swings in here, so there's a gap. And that's going to be on the outside or the front side. The big flat area here is going to be towards the inside or towards the gantry. We're going to take a track bracket here with our socket screw, and we're going to screw it right in there with a 4mm hex driver. Now, this stabilizer bracket is pretty flimsy, and you will be threading these screws, or this plastic, the stabilizer bracket. So it will give you a lot of resistance at first. I would suggest putting the stabilizer bracket into a vise of some sort, kind of clamp it there, gently, of course. You don't want to put too much force into it. It's basically just to prevent it from twisting, so you don't really need to grab it all that tight. But that way we could drive in the socket screw through the track right into the plastic. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. Of course, I've already threaded my stabilizer bracket, so it's really easy for me to get it started. Again, use a vise. It's very convenient. So we're going to screw this in here. Just to give it a nice little slight twist there, or tip there. Be careful, this is bendy, so until you get it installed, it's not really all that secure. Or the track brackets are secure, but it could break on you, so be very careful. So there's two pieces down here which slide into the tracks underneath the carriage. So we're going to take our tracks, we're going to slide it up around the router, line it up with that track, and it should just gently go right into place. Now, of course, you notice it also lines right up with our holes and our ears at the top, which we will take our longer M5 screws on the first and the third row of holes. It doesn't really matter which ones you use. There's 4 of them. If you really wanted extra security, but it's not really necessary, but 2 is enough to grab onto the track. And you'll need to take a 3mm hex driver. Again, you will be threading these screws, so you'll need to use a little bit of force at first. But once you screw it in there, and the nice thing is, even though you are threading that plastic, the plastic gives a really nice tight hold on that screw. So you don't need any Loctite or any sort of chemical or anything like that to kind of hold those screws into place. So once you get that in there, just tighten that down. There. Now, we've got our track bracket. We've got the attached to the bottom, which let me tighten that up just to make sure. There we go. Tight on the bottom, tight on the top. Let's switch over to the other side. So just like on the other side, we're going to take 2 of the long M5 screws, the 3mm hex driver, and we're going to screw it in. My OCD dictates that I use the same holes I used on the other side. So again, you're driving this into plastic, so it may take you some resistance. There may be some resistance. Of course, I've already threaded mine, so it's really easy the second time around. Just screw both of those in. That'll hold the top part. The track does come really close to these wheels, but it does not touch them, so it should give a nice secure connection there. We're going to tighten up the bottom just to be sure. There. The track bracket is in place. It is not going anywhere. We're ready to move on to the next step. All right, here we are on the next step. We're going to take our our right track support arm. We're going to attach it to our right track here. We're going to need a nut, the nut screw pin piece, and of course we're going to need a thumb screw. Put the thumb screw right through your support arm. Take the nut plate, come in from maybe the left side, and then of course the right side to kind of catch it. We're going to slide that into the track, and then you're going to use one finger to hold it. Should be plenty of room for it to slide all the way up and down the track, but just kind of hold it up towards the top. And I'll explain the reason for in a moment. So line up the screw, thumb screw, slide that into place. You can see that the L comes forward. And we're going to slide that up a little, kind of line it up with this screw here. That way there's plenty of height. So let's do this to the other side. So here we are on the other side, taking our left support arm, another plastic T-nut, and our thumb screw. Put the thumb screw right through the piece there. Come in from the right side this time, grab onto that T-nut, and use both to kind of wiggle that into place. It should slide nicely in the track. Use one screw on the left side to hold it. Come in with your thumb screw, kind of line it up. There it goes, caught it. So got that in there, and then slide it up and down. This should give you, slide easily whenever it's slightly loose, and then tighten it in whenever you want it to stop moving. Okay, here we are. We're ready to take our boot, slide it in from the back side. Slides right into position. It really doesn't go anywhere. If you are having any sort of trouble where you need to lock that boot into place, you could take the locking pins, just drop that right into place. You can come in from the bottom side with some locking nuts and thread that right onto the locking pin. Now once that is in place, that boot is not going anywhere. You're ready to go. Use these thumb screws to adjust it vertically. But also know that if you've got the stock XCarve, you will have limited vertical range. And part of that is the boot has to use some space. The boot has to keep its thickness so you can use whatever extractor you want. So it's got limited vertical clearance on the stock design. If you've upgraded to something like TBD's Ultimate Upgrade Kit or the one from CNC for newbies, you will have an additional couple of inches of clearance. In that case, these track brackets have a full range of 3.5 inches vertically, so you should easily be able to hit the bottom of that bed or the top of that bed if you've upgraded your XCarve. Thank you for joining me installing the PwnCNC dust boot onto the XCarve. Catch you in the next video. Happy making.